The Anti-Defamation League tracked a 38% increase in white supremacist propaganda last year.
Who's tracking that?
The Anti-Defamation League.
Yeah, the ADL, I don't think is a particularly credible source.
So
when
who
they
are we supposed to look at?
What's up, guys? It's your boy, Benny. What's the number one way to know that you are over the target? Well, it's when you ask questions that make the establishment and the elites hysterical, like when you ask questions about the 2020 election or about January 6th and what actually happened that day. And why were there so many federal agents? What are these guys with earpieces breaking into the Capitol? Why do they have earpieces? That doesn't make any sense. Why'd the cops open the door? No, you can't ask that question. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. And when you question some of the hierarchies that they put in place in their new woke religion, racial hierarchies, diversity hierarchies, and the intersectional hierarchy, of course, that mustn't ever be questioned because white people bad 100% of the time, even if you're the one who's white. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this was an interesting situation when a white reporter decided to question Vivek Ramaswamy, who is himself Indian, of Indian descent, and this hysterical white reporter began to seethe at Vivek for not towing the line to the new woke religion. It led to an absolutely spectacular moment that broadcast live on NBC and went thermonuclear on our social media. Vivek flips script on race-baiting NBC hack reporter. Watch her panic as her entire worldview collapses. 6 million views, 88,000 hearts on X, and I think you will heart it as well. Enjoy.
Let's talk about what, white supremacy and what happened last night for a moment, because when you were talking to reporters last night, you called white supremacy a myth. When someone asked you about Dylan Roof, you said you didn't know who that is. Have you looked up what happened in 2015?
Yeah, look, I said this last night. Invidious racial discrimination is wrong no matter how it happens. But if a Washington Post reporter is asking me almost like a catechism, whatever question I said, I'm against invidious racial discrimination, whatever form it takes, but says, do you denounce white supremacy? It's incumbent on us for us to define what white supremacy is. I wrote my book, Woke Inc., and I've written about the detailed understanding of what the popular understanding of these terms have come to mean. Do you believe punctuality is a vestige of white supremacy, Dasha?
Look,
because if you don't, then you have a disagreement about many of the people who are defining those terms, or the written word, or the use, or the nuclear family. These aren't my words. These are the words of intellectual proponents from Ibram Kendi to the Ayanna Presleys to BLM that have said these are vestiges of white supremacy. So
Mr.
we can't have it both ways.
What you do, though.
We have to have an honest discussion.
You choose straw man arguments.
Last night
you brought up Jussie Smollett as the best example of white supremacy.
Was the hottest thing in news in the back of a fake actual attack on him that we have to contend with.
And yet you have examples like the Buffalo shooter in New York just in 2022.
You have other examples.
But you are also cherry picking when you bring up Jussie Smollett.
I'll look at all of the statistics. More black on black crime. If you really care about actual crime against black Americans, let's get to the root causes of it in the inner cities of this country.
The Anti-Defamation League tracked a 38% increase in white supremacist propaganda last year.
Who's tracking that?
The Anti-Defamation League.
Yeah, the ADL, I don't think is a particularly credible source when they have a cherry-picked information.
When we're talking about
I would suggest look at there's a table, 2x2 table. Federal law enforcement data, which you could say what you do. Maybe we shouldn't believe that either. But look at black on Asian crime, black on black crime,
the FBI
white on black
hate crime statistics. That's a law enforcement agency. 59.1% was based on race, ethnicity, and ancestry, saying hate crimes rose 12% between 2020 and 2021.
Look at the absolute crimes themselves. What they classify as a hate crime is itself a political judgment. I think that when you actually care about protecting life, if you want to say Black Lives Matter, let's look at where black lives are actually being lost. It's in the cities, at the heart of other black Americans and criminals that are restrained by the absence
that we talk about as well. But are we supposed to ignore white supremacist hate crimes?
We're not supposed to ignore any kind of crime, Dasha. That's what I say. But what I see is a selective reporting. Take the Nashville Transgender Shooter Manifesto. Every shooter manifesto in a mass shooting has been released within 48 hours, except for that one shooter in Nashville. Now, it ended up being leaked. What do you see? It wasn't a white supremacist. It was somebody that was actually making fun of using derogatory terms. I believe.
Okay, so why are you okay talking about that manifesto and not talking about the manifesto from the 2015?
I'm more than okay talking about both. But what I'm asking is, why is the mainstream media suppress that one? Why did the police suppress that one? Why was that the one shooter manifesto that of all of the mass shootings, every other shooter manifesto has been released? I'm focused on that one because that's the one that's been hidden from us. And it comes back to the point of my candidacy and the way I'm going to run this country. Trust the people with the truth. If it doesn't match your narrative,
the reality is right now,
I think the media did not hold the police accountable. They would have been demanding that.
Starting to gain traction with the black community, with Latino voters. Do not worry that your rhetoric is pushing them away. There are folks
to the contrary. I think we're going to bring black people into this movement
who are concerned about your rhetoric.
Well, you know what? I'm concerned about their corruption. If you have somebody who actually one of the most prominent black influencer the other day, what did she say? I've been black my whole life, and this man could actually unify this country in response to a long exchange I had with a black pastor who had an event here in Iowa, did challenge me with a hard question, asking me, are my views against affirmative action, how do those align with historical racial injustice?
Affirmative action is a debate that is being had.
If I may just finish this. If I may finish my point,
deal
Dasha.
with racism,
I think I will be better
positioned. Denying that racism is a problem.
I've never denied that racism is a problem. And if you listen to the response I gave to that black pastor, my whole point is racism has been a major problem for most of our national history. But we're getting close to the promised land that Martin Luther King envisioned. We're as darn close to it as we ever have been. And so what bothers the heck out of me is it's right when we're close to that promised land. Martin Luther King said it, I may not get there with you, and he didn't get there with us. But I think it desecrates the legacy of our civil rights movement, desecrates the legacy of Martin Luther King, that right when we get closest to the point of having racial equality and gender equality and even opportunities for people of minorities of many types, are we perfect? No. But are we as close as we've ever been? Yes, we have. To then obsess over systemic racism, to then obsess over white guilt and otherwise, we're creating new waves of racism, Dasha, that we otherwise would have avoided right when we're closest to having achieved what even the proponents of the civil rights movement would have dreamed of. That's what bothers me. My exchange with that black pastor about a week or so ago, right here in Iowa, not far from where we are, it was in Indianola, not far from where we are in Des Moines, was that we're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union. The pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all. And I reject this left-wing narrative that's creating more artificial division. So I believe I will bring more black and Hispanic voters into our movement, not by saying fake poll-tested slogans, but by speaking the hard truth, that we've been imperfect in our past, but let us celebrate the progress we've made and reject the media's cherry-picking narratives to actually get to the truth of the matter. And now if we care about black lives, the things we're going to do isn't obsessing about white supremacy. It's actually fixing the problems in our cities, which I will do as our president.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can see why this meme has also gone quite viral of the reality show with the cat. It's so good. I love it. I love it. What was she talking about when she was describing, right, the interaction that he had with a reporter? They were talking about this interaction with the Washington Post reporter where Vivek Ramaswamy denounces racism, which presumably denounces everybody who thinks that their race is superior, everybody who thinks that their race should rule over someone else's race. That includes, by the way, black supremacists or Latino supremacists or Chinese supremacists, which, by the way, the Communist Party of China is a completely ethnocentric, racist regime, right? Like, they believe that their race is superior to all other races. The modern day Nazi party, right? Like, there you go. But you won't ever hear questions like that. It's the fact that Vivek Ramaswamy won't specifically name white supremacy that causes a hysterical meltdown ending in extra hilarity. Watch.
Do you condemn white supremacy and white nationalism?
I mean, who are you with? It's a Washington Post. All right, so potato, okay. Of course, I condemn any form of vicious racial discrimination in this country. But I think that the presumption of your question is fundamentally based on a falsehood that really is the main form of racial discrimination we see in this country today. Institutionalized racism is institutionalized racial discrimination that we see that doesn't come from somehow discriminating against people on the basis of some tenet of white supremacy. It's based on affirmative action. It's based on actually discriminating against people on the color of their skin in a way that's actually institutionalized today. Was there a point in our history, at points in our prior national history, where there have been vicious forms of anti-black or anti-brown discrimination throughout this country after the Civil War and otherwise? Yes. But you're looking in the rearview mirror and using that to pose a question today that is so far removed from what the reality is in America today. This myth of white supremacy, the closest you can find is Jussie Smollett, where you all were actually, speaking of trust in the media, jumping up and down over some false narrative. The best way you're able to find your best instance of white supremacy was a guy who was actually paying his other fellow people to be actually staging something that didn't happen. And so stop picking on this farce of some figment that exists at some infinitesimally small fringe of the American public today to open our eyes to the actual real threats that we face. And I think that it's frankly questions and framings like that that has caused the American public to lose all trust in the mainstream media, I'm sorry to say, for good reason.
You didn't say that you condemn white supremacy, though.
I'm not going to recite some catechism for you. I'm against vicious racial discrimination in this country. So I'm not pledging allegiance to your new religion of modern wokeism, which absolutely fits the test. I'm not going to bend the knee to your religion. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to bend the knee to mine, and I'm not going to bend the knee to yours. But do I condemn vicious racial discrimination? Yes, I do. Am I going to play your silly game of gotcha? No, I'm not. And frankly, this is why people have lost trust. And I know you're going to go print the headline tomorrow. I already know this. We already know how your game works. Vivek Ramaswamy refuses to condemn white supremacy because you asked a stupid question. The reality is, I condemn vicious racial discrimination in this country, but the kind of vicious and systematic racial discrimination we see today is discrimination on the basis of race in a very different direction. You want to know what the best way is to end discrimination on the basis of race? Stop discriminating on the basis of race. Do that, and we're going to move this country forward. And I don't care whether you're black or white or brown or anything in between. That's how we're going to unite this country. You people have been responsible for dividing this country to a breaking point, creating a projection of national division. I meet people from the south side of Chicago to meetings like this one of every shade of melanin, multiple, from man to woman, doesn't make a difference, who are hungry for reviving unity in this country. And you, with your catechism that you try to get to politicians to whatever fake headline you're going to print on the basis of this conversation tomorrow, that's what's dividing this country to a breaking point. Shame on you. Look people in the eye and tell them what you've actually failed to tell them for the last 5 years. Own the accountability for your own failures as the media. That's how we rebuild trust in this country. And until then, I don't have a lot of patience to play the games.
What do you expect from... At an earlier event, you talked about members of government playing by the same rules as everybody else.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is how it's done. That is how you know you're over the target. Well done, my boy, Vivek. Now, let's get out there and start wrecking more reporters. This is so entertaining to watch. You should not respect these people. They are not reporters. They are not journalists. They are not fair. They are activists. They are planted there in order to try and hurt you and sink your campaign. That is the goal of these people. And they should be treated like activists. That's it. So, you know, this is exactly what Vivek is doing. It's the same way as like there would be a screaming pink-haired protester, like screaming inside of your, like that's the same way you should treat journalists because they're the same people. Okay? Not like have a good debate, good spirited debate. That's really fun, actually. And I'm having a great time watching these clips. I hope you are too. Stay based. It's your boy Benny. Like, share, and subscribe.